Okay, everybody, the time's 2 o'clock. Let's get started. Welcome to another meeting of the Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency's Technical Advisory Committees. We just have a couple reminders here on screen. Obviously we're using Zoom, mute and unmute accordingly. Everyone's been doing really good with that over the past few months. If you're on a phone line and you want to mute and unmute, you're going to use *6 for that. *9 will raise and lower your hand. Please, no hold or hold music. We've been really good with that too. And then we're going to also have a public comment period on the agenda and at the various items that are there as well. So just look forward to that, and we will take comment. We always encourage that. And then we're recording this meeting, and the meeting materials we have available online. There's a couple presentations that are already online on the event page that are going to be presented today. So again, welcome. And now I'll just hand everything over to Karen and Sarah to administer the meeting.
Hi there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is the special joint meeting of the West Turlock and East Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency's Technical Advisory Committee, and it's held remote teleconferencing due to the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to the AB 361 that was signed into law September 16th of 2021. So we are looking to have a quorum today because we do have some action items. We have me here as present. Debbie? Yes. Herb is here. Curtis? With Hilmar? How about Miguel Alvarez with City Modesto? Maybe we're a little early. How about Mike Pitcock with Waterford? I saw you there.
I'm here.
Michelle Harris with Keys. And do we have Walter Ward with Stanislaus County? Lacey McBride with Merced?
Hey, Lacey's here.
Is there anybody that I missed?
I'm here from Daenerys CSD, David.
And Leandro, Del ICWD.
Okay. Jennifer, are we short a quorum right now?
Thank you, Vice Chair Morgan. Give me 1 second just to tally up based upon who has indicated themselves as being present. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like we only have a total of 6. We have a total of 7 TAC members present, but only a total of 6 member agencies. So let me run back through and just indicate who has said that they are here and present at the time to call to order. I have Vice Chair Morgan.
Yes.
I have Debbie Montalbano. I have Herb Smart. I have Mike Pitcock. I have Lacey McBride. I have David Odom. And I have Leandro Maldonado. Is there anyone else that's here representing the West Turlock Subbasin Technical Advisory Committee that we have not yet called? So it looks like we need 1 more agency representative from West Turlock before we actually have a quorum. So perhaps, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say we can let the East Side do their roll call, and hopefully by then we've had another member join.
Perfect. I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much.
Okay, Sarah.
It's Karen. Yes, I believe we do have a quorum. We have myself, Sarah Wolf, Matt Beeman.
Here.
And Dennis Yotsuya.
Here.
Thanks, Dennis. And Lacey McBride. And I did not see Walt Ward on yet, but we have a quorum there with 4 of us.
Oh, it looks like Walt's connecting as we speak. So I think that's going to take care of both of us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Well, then I will call the meeting to order at 2:05, and we'll add Walt to the roll when he gets here.
Walt Ward, can you confirm that you're on the line? We're just now going through doing a roll call for both.
Yeah, sorry, I was on a phone call. I'm on now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and count you present for both West Turlock and East Turlock. Thank you, Walt.
Great, and we have a quorum. That's great. Okay, so moving on to public participation. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak?
Yes, Lacey, this is Milt Treeweiler, Turlock citizen. I'd like to briefly speak.
Please do.
We're very fortunate in that the east and west subbasins contain some of the best farmland in the world. And we must protect this farmland. And we have the ability to do that and to adapt to the changes as they arise. One thing I think is that maybe we should plant or begin planting crops that have lower water needs. It seems like our area is pretty much concentrated in growing almonds, and there are many, many other crops other than almonds. And many of those crops would require less water usage. And the second point I want to come up with is that when we do have to reduce water usage, and I hope that's a long ways off, but who knows, it's done in an equitable manner so that we're not focusing on one group. Everyone is sharing the responsibility of reducing water usage equitably. And those are my statements for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milt. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to number 4. Every month we have this resolution so that we can continue having our meetings via teleconference. So this resolution is for that. It's the West Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency Technical Advisory Committee recognizing the state of emergency proclaimed by the governor on March 4th, 2020, which remains in effect, and reauthorizing remote teleconference meeting of the West Turlock GSA TAC for the period of November 28, 2021 through December 27th, 2021, pursuant to the Brown Act provisions. So to do this, we will need to have a motion.
I'll make a motion, Daenerys CSD.
Thank you, David.
I'll second. This is TID, Debbie Montalbano.
Thank you. So for all of those in favor, could you please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, please signify by saying nay. And the motion carries. So moving on to number 5, a programmatic environmental impact report. We have a presenter here, Meredith Parkin from Environmental Science Associates, ESA, and she will be giving us a presentation regarding the schedule and process associated. If somebody could put their phone on mute, that would be really appreciated. There's a lot of background noise. Thank you. Meredith Perkin from Environmental Sciences is here to report regarding the schedule and process associated with the programmatic environmental impact report. Meredith, are you ready?
I am. Or do you want me to share my screen?
Feel free, if you're comfortable, you should have access to do that.
Okay, excellent. Let me know if you can see it.
It's up.
All righty. So good afternoon. My name is Meredith Parkin, and I'm with Environmental Science Associates. I am the consultant lead for the West and East Turlock Subbasin GSP Program Environmental Impact Report, or PEIR. The objective of this presentation is to give you an overview of the PEIR, including the scope, analysis, and methodology used in the PEIR. I'm also going to be reviewing the PEIR schedule, including anticipated document review durations for GSA staff, and also brief you on the objectives of our twice monthly scheduled ad hoc PEIR meetings. And then there'll be time for questions if there's any questions. So I first wanted to start out with what is a PEIR. Essentially, a PEIR is developed when there's a series of actions that can be characterized as one large program or project, and that are related either geographically
as individual actions being carried out under the same authorizing statutory or regulatory authority, or having like similar environmental impacts or effects that can be mitigated in similar ways. So the plan level nature of the GSP, so for example, some of the projects in group 2 and group 3, there's uncertainty with the project specifics, such as exactly where the projects are going to go, the projects or the management actions, where they're going to be implemented, their size, configuration, etc., lends itself to this program level or PEIR. The PEIR also will inform the GSAs about potentially significant environmental effects of implementing the projects or management actions associated with the GSP. So I also want to go through a few of the benefits that come with a program level environmental impact report. One of the biggest ones is it really streamlines the CEQA process for these site-specific projects and management actions through tiering of the program environmental impact report or incorporating by reference information in the document. There's usually 3 different ways that we go about this for future site-specific projects. One is an addendum, meaning the PEIR analysis covered everything and the lead agency only needs to go through a CEQA addendum process that doesn't require public review. The supplemental ISM&D or EIR, those are if like there's minor changes to the projects or the management actions in the program environmental impact report. And the benefit with that is you don't have to re-release an NOP, and I'll get into what an NOP is, but you have a public review, but you only have to evaluate those changed conditions. You don't have to go back and evaluate everything. And then there's a subsequent. And that's similar to a supplemental, but if there's major changes to the projects or management actions. What is also beneficial is the PEIR will provide a coverage for program level system-wide operational impacts. For example, potential hydrological impacts associated with operating the GSP projects. And they also provide program level coverage for alternatives and cumulative and other type sections. So regarding the analysis and methodology in the PEIR, since there are many types of projects and management actions that could be implemented under the GSP, for example, recycled water, ag recharge, regulating reservoirs, etc. And some of these projects are underway, for example, group 1 and group 2, specific details, like I said before, are not known for all projects, like the size, configuration, location, etc. Therefore, each of the resource area sections in the PEIR, for example, biological, water quality, cultural, will address the potential range of impacts and mitigation measures for the types of projects and management actions that could be implemented under the GSP. The PEIR will describe impacts and mitigation measures for both construction and operations and associated with the projects and management actions. And since some groundwater projects have already been implemented, for example, group 1 projects, we may look to some of those construction operational assumptions and analysis from existing studies and use those in the PEIR. So next is schedule. The PEIR essentially starts in November this month with the notice of preparation, which is also called an NOP, and ends with the final PEIR in early 2023. We have a variety of key points within the PEIR process, which I'll go through today. First is the NOP, like I mentioned, which kicks off the scoping or public engagement portion of the program environmental impact report. The scoping allows the public and other agencies to provide input into the range of actions, the alternatives, mitigation measures, and significant effects evaluated in the PEIR. The NOP and scoping are anticipated to be between December 2021 and January 2022. Once scoping is completed, we'll then turn into developing the entire admin draft PEIR. This includes development of the project description, alternatives, and then the full analysis within the admin draft. So the timeframe there is between November 2021 and May 2022. I know this sounds like a long time frame, but this also includes many of the reviews, the GSA reviews, the separate sections, and also the entire admin draft. Then we'll have a second admin draft, a screen check draft, and a public draft. This is all before it goes public, so give plenty of review time. And that's anticipated between May 2022 through July 2022. And then finally, the public draft, we're anticipating releasing it in July of 2022, and that's a mandatory or minimum of 45-day public review duration, and that's calendar days. And then next is the admin final, and that includes the response to any comments that we get on the public draft and the public final. So we have two versions of that, and that goes from September 2022 through February 2023, when we're anticipating delivering a notice of determination in early 2023. So just to give you a sense of what we have from the GSA review durations is the smaller documents and sections, for example, like the project description or alternatives that will come out during the admin draft review. That's about 5 to 10 working days, so 1 to 2 weeks of review time. When we get into those larger drafts, like the admin draft, we've had 15 working days, which is 3 weeks. And then the final drafts, as we get towards like the second admin and the screen check, we go down in time frame, hoping that there would be less review, and that's 5 to 10 working days. And that's all incorporated into our schedule. Just a little bit about, we've started to schedule these, what we're calling the ad hoc PEIR meetings. They're scheduled, right now they're scheduled every other week. We have a little variation for the holiday here, but we have every other week starting in January. And the objective of those meetings are to really inform the team of upcoming document reviews, to discuss and gain feedback on PEIR elements, for example, the project description, methodology, et cetera, and then also provide just general coordination on other ongoing elements of the GSP. And those members are from both the West and East Turlock subbasins. That's the end of my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, not hearing any. Thank you very much, Meredith.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. So I think for our previous action, we need to do a roll call vote. So we're going to have to go back one. So I'll vote myself yes. Debbie?
Pardon me, say that again.
This is for the resolution to meet teleconference.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
Definitely.
so I apologize, I missed that. So for the roll call vote, Karen Morgan, yes. Debbie Montalbano?
Yes.
Herb Smart?
Yes.
Miguel Alvarez, I don't think made it on the call. Mike Pitcock?
Yes.
Walter Ward?
No. Yes.
Lacey?
Yes.
Lacey? Did I miss some, Jennifer?
Thank you. We also have Leandro Maldonado
Yes.
and David Odom. Which we may have lost him in between our roll call and that vote. Let's see.
Do we need everybody to vote yes for it to pass?
I believe we also have Michelle Harris on the.
Oh, Michelle?
Yes. At least I see her name.
She says yes in
Yes,
the
she
chat
says
box.
yes. Perfect. So
Thank you, Michelle.
we are good. Thank you so much. And my apologies for that. I couldn't get around quick enough. First, I had my my line unmuted, and then I couldn't get back to the roll call soon enough. And we typically do motions. So Vice Chair Morgan was absolutely right on by doing a motion and in a second and taking the vote accordingly. But based upon our bylaws, we typically need to do a roll call vote for resolutions. And so my apologies that I wasn't able to jump in time. So thank you very much for the confusion and letting us go back to this item. I think we're good and we can move forward.
Well, thank you for helping me with that. I appreciate it.
And
Absolutely.
Okay, so
as well, I just wanted to clarify my vote was yes. for Sinead.
thank you all.
You just like to keep us on our toes, huh, Walt?
Okay, so moving on to number 6, the annual report. We have a presentation and discussion with Dominic Amador from Woodard and Curran. Are you ready, Dominic?
So I can get it up on the screen for everybody and we'll get started. All right, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you everybody for attending. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. Now just jumped ahead. Okay, sorry about that. A little bit of technical issues, but thank you everybody for attending today's TAC, both for in a general sense and for being able to hear a little bit of kind of a prelude to us getting started on the annual report. So for anybody that is unaware, an annual report is a requirement of Sigma. It's for kind of a continuation of the GSP process, and so part of that. Part of the process and part of our sustainability goals entails developing kind of an update every year and being able to quantify a lot of the conditions within the subbasin on a regular basis and then regularly report that to the Department of Water Resources. So in order to kind of get the ball rolling when it comes to our first annual report, is going to be to kind of take a look and for the most part today I want to go over some of the data requests that we're going to have and kind of set the stage for what is some of the work that we're going to be doing in the coming months. Now, and the reason why in the coming months is because as you can kind of see here, we are on a very tight timeline with our first annual report. As you can see, our initial cut of the GSP is due January 31st, 2022, so in a couple months. And then our first annual report is due effectively 2 months later on April 1st. And so effectively, we are on a tight timeline. We are kind of on an expedited path, which is why I'm kind of coming with you all to you all today to really kind of get started basically as quick as we can. And so, and in addition to the fact that we are trying to have a very quick turnaround and update DWR for conditions up to 2022, it's not just for the very first period, it's not just an annual report, meaning a single year, but because this is our first annual report, it must basically bring all of our conditions to date. So effectively the GSP produces what we're considering kind of a historical conditions or describes those as being up to the 2015 water year. Now, because it's been 6 years since then, what we need to do is effectively, we're going to kind of bridge a gap and we're going to develop a lot of the analysis that we've done for the past historical, and we're going to actually bring all that up to date with information, with our modeling, with our observed monitoring systems. Basically, bring everything up to date and be able to provide DWR information on the years 2016 to 2021. And so effectively, we're going to do an annual report that focuses in on the 2021, on the 2021 water year, but then we have to also add all that extra supplemental information to kind of bring DWR up to our starting point. So in order to do that, we actually have I've kind of got a list here kind of eight tasks, kind of effectively what are some of the big high level items that we need to provide to DWR, and really what's the kind of the order of tasks or of items that we need to complete in order to be able to produce this report for the state. So as with any kind of general analysis or quantifiable task, the first step is going to be compile data. And this is going to be really kind of the bulk of our chat today is going to be about is really what is the data that's going to go into this report, and supplemental to just compiling the data is what I have as task 2 here, which is going to be update, in this case, the C2V sim version of what we're considering the Turlock model. And effectively, we're going to both compile all the observed data that we have, all the records that we have for the past 6 years, and then we're going to be able to input that into the existing model that we've talked about over the past many months and years. And we're going to kind of incorporate that data into the model and to develop new hydrographs, new water budgets, and really kind of compile that information into a kind of a supplemental report for the state. And so today we're really just going to be focusing in on what data we're going to be needing and kind of what is the process and how we're going to be updating the model. As I spoke to a second ago, we also have the several tasks as far as the development and analysis of hydrographs, water budgets, groundwater elevation contours, looking at groundwater overall change in groundwater storage, both for principal aquifers and kind of on a big basin scale. And then we're going to perform a water quality analysis before wrapping it up into this final task, which is prepare and submit our annual report. So before I dive into really looking at the kind of specifics of these first few tasks, main thing I want to bring to everybody's attention is what is our timeline. And so what I have here is a kind of our proposed project schedule. As I mentioned earlier, our goal is to submit to DWR the completed annual report right here on April 1st. You can kind of see this big star. It's my important deadline that we have to make as a subbasin. Now, because of the expedited process, it's a big ask to all the agencies, and I know it, but that's why we're getting started early. Is I need to be able to collect, compile, and analyze information and analyze that data. And so because of that, I'm really going to be focusing on this first 1 month period, kind of what we're focusing in on as today, approximately November 15th, to our goal of December 15th, which is when we would like to receive all this data back so that we can incorporate it into our modeling, our water level, our groundwater storage analysis, which is what will be done kind of over the coming months. And so we do have, again, this expedited timeline, and so that's why we're starting today, right in the center of November. Okay, so getting into really what is kind of the bulk of this. Well, the goal of this conversation and of at least this first step, that first task, is to be able to support the development of the annual report. And the goal of those kind of 3 to 4 items that I had a second ago, what we can utilize for the modeling, what the model can support is developing water budgets. We can use those water budgets to both temporally and spatially estimate groundwater production and change in storage. Now, the reason why I call these two out specifically is because both change in storage and groundwater production on a spatial scale for each year is a requirement of Sigma, and it's a requirement to be in our annual report. And so I just want to kind of make sure I separate out those two. But as part of that, because from the general management of the basin as a whole, we will be developing the complete package, the complete water budgets for input into the into the annual report itself, but also to provide to each GSA in order to kind of help just the general management of the basin and kind of our continued operations. So if that's our goal, really, how are we intending on utilizing the model? How are we intending on updating the model? Well, as I mentioned a second ago, the model currently ends in the end of the 2015 water year. Now that is in line with the kind of our study period for the general GSP. And in order to update it for use in the annual report, we need to extend that period from 2016 through the 2021 water year. And so in order to do that, we are effectively extending all the time series data that is available, and we are going to implement that into the model itself. And I'll go over to exactly what those time series input files that we're going to be talking about. I'll go over those in a second. But the goal, kind of the 3 main steps of the model update process for this, is to extend the time series, to verify that the model's performance. So basically this means comparing our simulated water levels, stream flows, basically take a lot of our simulated values and compare those to any additional supplemental observed data. And which is one of the reasons why, in addition to implementing a lot of our operational data, we're also be collecting observational data from our monitoring networks as well, because we want to be able to continue to know how well the model is simulating the current and existing conditions. So we're kind of pulling that period again up from 2015 through 2021. And then the last aspect that I wanted to make sure I notice, or make sure I is clear, is that as of right now, the plan is that we are not intending on any kind of effectively recalibration or adjustment of model parameters, adjustment of model structure. The goal is that for at least for the annual update, for the sake of efficiency, or particularly for the sake of that very tight timeline, there's just simply not enough time to do any further evaluation of the model. So this is purely kind of an extension on a temporal basis. Okay, so if we want to kind of get into really what are some of the data inputs that we're going to be utilizing in the model. Again, we're going to be updating all the time series data. So, but I've broken that data into kind of three main categories. One is what I'm considering regularly publicly available data from state, federal, and other resources. So this is information that I can collect online or through through cooperation with some of these other agencies, but it basically doesn't take any additional information from you or from any of the local agencies. And so kind of to the basis of this, kind of this first group of data is use of precipitation, ET. This is basically a lot of our hydrological information. From a operational perspective, we're going to be updating the time series with new and updated land use data. So this is going to be from a program called Land IQ that's run by Department of Water Resources. We're going to be updating our land use, and then in addition to that, we are also going to collect the stream flow and groundwater level data. And those again are really to check the validation. They don't necessarily affect what the results of the model is, but they help us verify that the model is simulating our conditions properly, and that it's a continued tool that we want to make sure we want to use. So effectively, this is all the information that I don't need help with. I can just go to state resources effectively and pull this information on my own. But I just want to make sure that you are aware of this this is kind of the source of this type of data that is going in to your model. So which comes to my data request. Now, this is information that I do need help from each of you to provide for input into the data. Now, I'm kind of broken this data request into two categories: groundwater supply and surface water supply, predominantly because hydrology and most of our water demand is going to be captured from a lot of the resources in the previous slide. When it comes to agricultural demand, it's really heavily driven by land use and evapotranspiration, our consumptive use of water. And then when it comes to our urban water supplies and demands, those are generally very in line with one another. And so because of that, they're effectively one-to-one. And so we can utilize this data directly. So if we want to first take a look at our groundwater supply, the first and the bulk of this information being an evaluation of our groundwater system is to look at and understand what is our groundwater production? How much pumping are we doing? Now we understand that there is, particularly when it comes to groundwater pumping, we are not going to know a lot of information around private operations, and we understand that, and we have other ways to estimate that information. But what we would like to directly implement into the model is what is our agency and our water purveyors, how much groundwater are they using? And so effectively what I'm asking for is an update to the volumetric production by well. Now, our model already has a lot of this information, again, up through 2015. And so what we're looking for is an extension of that time series. So effectively, if we can collect monthly groundwater pumping by well, then we can actually simulate that volumetric pumping on a well-by-well basis and really be able to capture the flow dynamics within our aquifer system. In addition to that, we understand that there is a distinct possibility that there have been new wells from some of these agencies that have either been put into place, particularly some of these new wells. And if that's the case, we are looking for any information related to location, depth, and kind of effectively what's their pumping interval, and effectively where are we pulling, what aquifer are we pulling that water out of. And so if there's any new wells, we'd like to collect that information. Otherwise, if there's existing wells in those operations, we would just like how much water is being pumped by them. And effectively, what I have here additionally is we would like to make sure we collect some of the local groundwater level monitoring data that we have that the agencies here are able to provide. We are going to be supplementing this with some of the state resources and databases, both CASTGEM and Water Data Library. But we definitely know that a lot of these water purveyors monitor their own their own wells. And so because of that, again, it's one of those things that the more data, the better. This is really part of the monitoring network that we've talked about extensively over the course of developing the GSP. So we're effectively similarly looking for an extension of that time series. And then here, right here on the right, I basically have a list of water purveyors. These are effectively the agencies that are currently being simulated in the model and at least within the Turlock Subbasin. And so this is what I currently have both the well location and well pumping time series from. And so this is kind of just a kind of a nod to each of these agencies as that effectively you're going to be getting a data request from me shortly, kind of effectively asking for these time series. So then if we want to take a kind of a sidestep to our surface water supply, surface water supply in the Turlock Subbasin is going to be predominantly focused in on Turlock Irrigation District, Merced Irrigation District, and then we have some riparian users, although they're a little harder to get data for. And so, so particularly focusing on our two irrigation districts that provide surface water supplies, we're effectively asking for what are your operations. Now, what I have here is effectively a list of aspects of their operations that really most predominantly affect the modeling system. Now, there are a couple other components in which we've already been working with these agencies to provide, but kind of this is a quick summary for everyone else's perspective to really understand what types of things go into the model and what parts of those time series that we're extending and that we're looking for this data. So predominantly, effectively, initially we're looking at the river inflow. So for both of these agencies control a reservoir system, and because of that, they are also, they both control and meter inflows into the Tuolumne and the Merced rivers. And so we're requesting river inflow from these two locations here. In addition to that, effectively at both of these locations, at these river inflow locations, there are also diversions. Now, for Turlock Irrigation District, we're looking at their main canal diversions, and for Merced Irrigation District, we're really looking at for the diversions of volume of water that is going into the Turlock Subbasin. So this is going to be the north side canal. Effectively, if we can capture those diversions, we can then also kind of parse out where that diversion water goes to, right? So if let's say we start with a given volume, we can going into their canal system, then we then must know what is going out of their canal system. And by out of their canal systems, the first and the bulk of that is going to be what are your surface water deliveries? These are the volumes of water that are delivered to a given user for their general consumptive use of that water. So in both these districts are going to be predominantly for agricultural use. This is going to be the deliveries to a given farm or parcel. So effectively, we're requesting both kind of TID and MID's surface water deliveries as to their main delivery area, their main customers. Also, if there are any out-of-district sales in the past 6 years, then we would like to be able to kind of separate that out to make sure we know that we deliver that water specifically to the area that it's used. That way we can simulate the operations there better. And then the last aspect we have as far as deliveries, and this is actually not from these two primary agencies, but if there is any recycled water, reuse water, we would like to know if those conditions are still ongoing. But predominantly, this is going to be recycled water from the city of Modesto. We have some deliveries into this basin. Also, we also have some reuse water from Hillmore cheese that is used and is utilized for irrigational purposes, and so we're kind of going to be collecting that as well. So in addition to our direct water use, there's also has the ultimate delivery of water. There is some conveyance-based recharge. Now, this is generally considered seepage out of the conveyance system. So there's going to be seepage out of our canals and seepage out of Turlock Lake. So any kind of percolation or just general recharge that the basin benefits from each of these systems. And so how the model simulates that, we actually separate out seepage from the upper main canal for the Turlock Lake, and we have considered the lower distribution system for TID. In addition to that, also Merced Irrigation District, since they do operate those canals, we know that they also have some canal seepage and recharge, and that we want to be able to really quantify that as well. So we're requesting any kind of seepage numbers that they have off of the north side canal and that delivery system. And then the final component when it comes to our surface water supply is going to be what are the operational spills. We acknowledge that as a property of conveyance, there is going to be some return flow to the system, to the river system, excuse me. And what we're doing is there are actually, I want to say, 7 spills in TID and at least 1 or 2 off of the North Side Canal. This is water that goes from their conveyance system back to the Merced, Tuolumne, or San Joaquin rivers. And so this way we can really account for this and make sure, and we account for that when it comes to our stream aquifer interaction and the overall flow dynamics of both the stream and eventually the groundwater system. And similarly, I just want to add this note down here is that similarly to some of the previous data requested, we are requesting all of this on a monthly time step to best fall in line with the model simulates everything on a monthly time step. So to be consistent with that and be able to capture operations at that monthly time scale, effectively we are looking to kind of fill those model data sets with each of these values on a monthly period. Okay, so again, as a kind of getting into my last couple of slides here, kind of as a summary, again, I really want to reiterate that in order to meet this timeline and this kind of expedited schedule, we're really requesting that all this data be received and able for model implementation by December 15th. So that effectively, that's about a 1-month period from now. And that because of this time period, as much as I would like to be able to kind of accept trickled in information, the timeline really just doesn't allow us to facilitate that during this project. And so because of that, I just want to make sure everybody knows that any information that we receive after December 15th, or if we don't receive a given data set at all, that effectively we're not going to be able to incorporate it into the model. Now, I do have other ways to estimate that data. We can look at some of the historical periods, and we will do our very best to simulate conditions if any data is missing, but please, I'm asking everybody to kind of please do your best. I know it's a heavy lift, it's a big ask, and a tight timeline for you as well, but I'm just asking please do your best to at least work with me over the next few weeks to month and help us get this data as soon as possible so that we can implement it into the model. So then real quick in summary, as I've kind of mentioned towards the beginning of this, we are on a that expedited timeline. This is due April 1st. And, initially the reason why we're starting right now is because this is only 2 months, a very short period after submission of our GSP. So because of that, we're gonna have to do a little bit of an overlap. And as we're kind of finalizing the GSP, receiving public comment, responding to those comments, we're gonna do our very best to get started on that annual report right now. And to do that, I need your help and I need the data that I've kind of gone over in the past couple slides. And then in order to support both you providing data and all of us being able to be on the same page as to what data is available and is needed and really what kind of format we needed. I'm hoping that early next week is my goal to provide a kind of a very detailed list of effectively everything that goes into the model. So we're going to go through each of the model features for when it comes to things that are more detailed than what I spread. So for example, all the wells. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of wells that are, the goal is I'm going to give you a list of each and every well and the existing time series that is in the model right now. And then we'll leave kind of effectively a couple blanks for any of the time series that we need from 2016 through 2021. So I'll be working with both GSAs to kind of set a framework of what information is needed. And then we'll be just kind of working back and forth with them to be able to fill in that information. And if there's any questions, obviously I am available and I will work with each of whether it's a GSA or an individual water purveyor to collect and anything I can do to help any of the data, I will be available for. So with that, thank you very much. That's all I have for today. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them.
Okay, it doesn't sound like there's any. Okay. Thank you very much, Dominic. That was very informative. Oh, go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, just wondering, making sure, I know Liz mentioned that the data they needed is up to the end of September 2021. And picking up from where we left off with the GSP, so I imagine somewhere between 2015 to up to the end of September 2021. Correct,
so,
Dominic?
Yeah, so what we're asking for is inclusive October 2015, the beginning of the 2016 water year, so October 2015 through September 2021.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Dominic?
I've got one. Dominic, do you have some of that data already? I think there may have been some data kind of collected as we moved through the initial one. So if you already have that, could you incorporate that in the ask so that people aren't recompiling that information?
Absolutely. So I would say there's very little, if any, data that goes all the way through September, or through September 2021, because we haven't collected any data recently. But it is my goal, both for this annual report and for any other future updates to the model that we do, is I want to build kind of effectively a growing time series. And so my goal is that every year we can provide the same spreadsheets back and forth to one another, where it has not all the data that you've ever provided, and then blanks where we're asking further information to be kind of added to that. So for example, because we didn't start this process in 2015, there are many data sets and time series that will go through, that will end somewhere in 2017 through 2019. It's kind of the bulk of the mix of it. My goal is to effectively have those blanks already filled in, both for the reason that you've mentioned, because I don't want to have to ask for the same thing twice. But in addition to that, I also think it's very useful for agencies to be able to see the data that they've already provided me and kind of give it just a quick nod or look through, QC the information, just to make sure, a little bit of feedback to make sure that I am representing your data properly and that everybody's on the same page.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Dominic. And I just wanted to emphasize the importance of timeliness for working through this process, because we don't have a lot of time, and we have it's just like with the GSP, we have a solid deadline of January 31st for the GSP. We have a solid deadline of April 1st for the annual report, and so this first annual report is a bigger lift, but hopefully when we start doing this on an annual basis next year, and future years, it'll be a little easier because we know what we're getting into. So I really I know it's a big ask, and I know everyone's busy, and I know it's the holidays. But if we can, I'll pull together the data that we need and get it over to the consultant team, then they can kind of begin working through that process. And it's a real tight time frame for them too, and they're also doing the GSP. So yeah, whatever we can do to help is much appreciated.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, everyone.
Thank you. So next on the list is the Sigma related updates.
Yeah, Karen, I'll jump in on that one. I just have 3 items for the communication outreach component. The first thing is, obviously, it's not news to anybody on this call, but all of the chapters now, the draft chapters, have been released for public review. And so those are available on our website on the GSP page at turlockgroundwater.org. Just encourage everybody who has not, seen them at least, to download them and take a look at them. If they choose to comment, there's multiple ways that those can be commented on, those draft chapters. It's a lot of pages, but a lot of them have been released prior to a couple weeks ago when the last batch was released. And so just encourage people to do that. And we're asking for comments. We're requesting them, by the 15th of December, which is about a month away. And so we'll certainly look to take comments that come in a little bit later, but in order for them to be able to help influence the GSP before the GSP is adopted, we're hoping they come in before that December 15th date. And that's my first piece. The second piece is, on that day, the 15th, we're planning to have a joint meeting of the GSA boards, and hopefully be able to go over in some workshop format the comments that have been received thus far, how they've been categorized and tracked and logged, and then maybe take in any final comments or any comments that haven't been made thus far. And so you'll hear more about that as we move forward. And then my last item here, the GSAs acted earlier this week on Monday to set a public hearing date for the GSP adoption potentially, and they set that date for January 6th of next year. And so save the date there, so you could hear presentation on everything that's in the GSP, or at least highlight some of the things in the GSP, and then have a discussion and potentially comment there at that public hearing as required by statute. That's all I have, unless anybody who else has been involved in the public outreach has anything to add or anything I missed, or if there's any questions.
This is Rhett. I have a question.
Go ahead, Rhett.
I think there was behind the scenes an agreement between the East GSA and the West GSA regarding putting off addressing some water accounting. And is that in form of a written agreement that the public can have access to?
I know that what there is, and I could provide a link to it as well. I know that it's part of the agenda packet for the meeting we had on Monday, the joint GSA meeting. All of that documentation is provided, and I'm going to put a link to it in the chat, but I believe that's to which you're referring, Rhett. And it covers a lot of those things with water accounting framework, all the memos that went into that, and then also how things are perceived respectively by each GSA. So I'm going to put that in the chat, a link in the chat, and I think that's what you're looking for.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Herb, this is Valerie, just Kincaid. And that was adopted in a public meeting and publicly noticed. And so it's a first amendment to the memorandum of agreement between the two GSAs. And Herb's right, you can read the language yourself, but it talks about the negotiation of water accounting and how that will be resolved right after we adopt the GSP. And to date, it puts kind of all the materials from both the East and the West on the water accounting subject as attachments. So that's all public information. It was adopted in public and reviewed. And so you should be able to see that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, Debbie, is this on to you with the GSP schedule?
I suppose so. I have the GSP schedule, as you all know, is to adopt it by January 6th, so we can begin uploading the information into the DWR's portal. And then all the information will be publicly available. And then, as I understand it, DWR provides an additional comment period for the GSP. So that's our goal, and all of the, as Herb mentioned, all of the chapters are now available, and we are working on compiling and pulling together all of the various appendices that will be included in the final GSP as we speak. So so we're working through that. What I did want to mention is a brief update on the grants, and then a study that's being done by DWR. So that should help in the future as we move in the understanding of the subbasin, and as we move forward with managing the basin and implementing Sigma and the GSP. So let's talk first about the grants. We are in the process of pulling together the invoice to DWR for the third quarter of 2021. And the first grant that we received for development of the GSP will be completed after the GSP is submitted. Then we'll finish the grant final report and submit that to DWR, and then they'll kind of review it and approve finishing the first grant. And then the second grant, which includes the PEIR that Meredith described and the process that we're going through for that. It includes the monitoring wells, which we now have all of the permits for. So I should be able to report soon on the date that we're going to be installing them. We're working with the contractor right now to get a revised schedule. And then the last component is the GRAT, or the Groundwater Recharge Assessment Tool, which is being finalized as well. And so I'm hoping we'll be able to schedule a meeting with the tax to go over what's been developed here soon. So that grant will end in October of 2022, and then we'll again complete another final report and submit that to DWR. So that's kind of the next steps in the grants. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the AEM project that DWR is developing. We just found out that the Turlock Subbasin will be one of the subbasins that the Department of Water Resources will be surveying next spring using what they call AEM technology, which is airborne electromagnetic surveys. And so they take a helicopter and they have a large loop basically that is underneath the helicopter that flies over the land about 100 feet above the ground surface. And it's able to gather information that can help to evaluate what's underneath the land surface and provide detailed information. And so they'll be basically flying a grid over the entire valley, and they're developing that grid as we speak. And so they're asking for data from the individual agencies. And so they've reached out to the GSAs to see if there's existing data that might be helpful. And so if there is detailed e-logs or well logs that have been digitized that has really good information about the lithology, that information will be helpful to then take and calibrate, I think, the data that comes out of the survey. And so I had Jennifer send out the data request that DWR provided to us along with the information that they've asked for, to see if there's additional information that's available from the individual agencies. Some of the urban agencies, for example, may have e-logs or other things from the wells that they've installed or the studies that they may have done that may not have been available as we developed the GSP and the initial data requests. And because the consultant team that we have right now is desperately trying to complete the GSP, so we're working really hard to do all of the technical work to complete the GSP. There isn't a lot of extra time to pull information together for this process, and so I'm hoping that the individual agencies might be able to help with this. The data request asks for the data by December 1st, so there isn't a lot of time to pull anything together either. So I was hoping I'm not really familiar with this process, and perhaps Mike is. He sat in on, I think, the call as well. And I was hoping that perhaps Derek might be able to weigh in on the types of things that might be helpful, and then we could talk about how we can kind of compile it. So I'll be quiet now, Mike.
No worries. Yeah, so I mean, the low-hanging fruit is if we can take and identify alignments for flight lines that might be preferable to what they have planned now. And that would take, that probably wouldn't take too much effort. It would be best if we could coordinate with folks that have some involvement or responsibility with some of the other subbasins. And specifically, I would probably start with, Walt and Lacey, and just maybe talking briefly about where we might, align flight lines. The data will be good no matter where we gather it. It's just, if we have flight lines over specific areas or at specific elevations where we think we could benefit from some more insight into what the aquifer geometry looks like or what the water table looks like. So I would suggest that maybe we have an ad hoc discussion and involve Walt and Lacey, which I think can represent the interests of both GSAs as well as potentially GSAs to the south and to the north. So that would be the easy part. And then in terms of data that they can use, if you have wells that have been installed, especially near where the flight lines are, that have especially good e-logs or, electric logs, geophysical logs associated with them, they could use that data to kind of calibrate what they call their inversion model. In other words, this looks at the equivalent of electric conductivity in the subsurface, and that can be either related to whether you're in sand or clay, or it can be related to the amount of dissolved solids in the groundwater. So, having those kinds of logs just helps them calibrate the information a little bit better. So I don't know how you would want to handle this, Debbie, but perhaps anybody that has some wells that they know of, that they have that kind of data that would be easily procured and sent to the DWR, we can do that, through you or through Sarah or myself, and just collect that information and send it on. They will provide the results of their survey using one inversion model. They'll also provide raw data, so should we want to use it and refine it later, we can. It's just, the closer that we can get in this first go round, the less likely that we would have to spend, time and effort on refining it later. But I don't think it's like things will fall apart if we can only provide, a few boring logs.
Yeah, I did reach out to Liz, and she provided, I think, 5 or 6 different ideas, as far as like wells that they had pulled out as they did the analysis. And it may be that Wood Rogers has some others over on the eastern side. So perhaps you could reach out to them, Mike, because they did the analysis for the east side area for the basin setting. But that's what she was able to kind of pull together in a very short notice. And I see, Derek, you've unmuted. Maybe you have some additional thoughts.
Well, I was going to support Mike. I mean, he's absolutely right in the approach you want to do here. Find the flight lines would be good. He's absolutely right. What they are going to be looking for, and I haven't looked at this data request, but generally what they've asked for in the past is, and Mike is right, wells near the flight lines are going to be better. Any well will work, but wells near the flight line will be better. Wells with e-logs are the best. Deeper wells are better because it gives them more information. But even if it's not deep or doesn't have an e-log, if it has a very good lithologic description, they will want that too. That gets a little squirrely as what we decide is a good lithologic description. But they don't want one that just says sand from the ground down to 500 feet or something. They want actual geologic descriptions, because then they can make some assessment. So maybe when the groundwater model was built, they might have some well logs that were used for that. If so, they probably know which well logs are the best. Otherwise, if agencies know that they have fairly good well logs, if they trust certain drillers, maybe those are the ones to send along. DWR usually asks for two other things, at least also. One of them is a list of groups that they can use for their outreach. DWR has their own outreach system. And so they want to be warning people they're going to be flying helicopters over them. So they would like a list of agencies, a list of organizations that they can include in their outreach group. They usually also request that you take water levels in your wells very close to the time when they fly these, because the water level will have an impact on how they interpret these data. So they want, everybody should sort of coordinate to get water levels taken fairly close to that time period. Those are the things they usually ask for.
And they did include those asks
Okay.
as well. They talked about wanting to provide information to the property owners along the flight paths eventually. So there'll be some of that in coordinating with the GSAs and in public outreach on, information about this, but we don't know the exact schedule yet for us. So I didn't go there, but you're definitely right. And then there is a need for the water level measurements as well. So we'll need to coordinate on that end. But I think the first ask is this data request and the flight lines. And then Walt and Lacey, I don't know if you guys are able to weigh in, and I don't even know if, maybe the counties have additional information that might be helpful in the process from a well log perspective or e-logs.
I'm just ready, to engage in the conversation and further explore it. I think Derek is absolutely right. We do need to have very good well completion report and lithologic logs, hopefully, prepared by a geologist that sat on a well. That's going to be important in order to, correlate the geophysics. I think somebody mentioned Wood Rogers, excellent idea. They use, they've drilled a lot of exploratory wells in the area, and probably have as good of information and understanding as anybody on where the good logs are, which will help us figure out, where these flight lines could be. I'd also be intrigued, John Lambie and EPURE has mapped, and others have mapped consistently some lyric sets of faults, and whether or not that's controlling or influencing or having whatever effect on groundwater circulation patterns would be very intriguing to pursue. And so looking at where we've created some of our cross sections, if the flight lines could be oriented at 90 degrees or whatever they need to be, I don't know, to pick up where these fault traces may be, I think that'd be interesting as well.
Right. Yeah, we've had some conversations about that. So, I think maybe we can continue the conversations. We are either, well, we're gonna probably use a base map and then, create some, preferred flight lines or something that maybe we can coordinate with you and then discuss at a future ad hoc meeting.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
The next ad hoc meeting is scheduled for Monday. Mike, do you want to kind of be the focal point for some of that, and maybe be ready for a conversation then? Or do we need to schedule a separate one? But there's not a lot of Mondays between now and the 1st.
Yeah, no, understood. Let me check with Steve Carlton. He's started looking into this, and you know, maybe he can coordinate with one of our GIS folks to, you know, to plot some maps on, you know, some lines on a map. I'm thinking this doesn't have to be anything fancy. You know, I think what it is informing them of areas that where we think there's high value in collecting data, and you know, they'll accommodate us to the extent that they can, I understand, but in view of, you know, their flight plans, right? So can't, for example, expect to be on one flight line and then cross the Tuolumne River and then go over 6 kilometers and go on another flight line. That's not going to work. But I think what we can do is identify for them where our high sensitivity areas are and maybe suggest some flight lines. But the main thing that they've asked for is our high sensitivity areas. So it's probably just a matter of kind of circling those or shading those on a map.
Yeah, you know, just thinking of what you just said made me realize there's some high voltage power transmission lines out there, and we can probably virtually know right now that those are we're gonna have to take those into consideration, either vertical separation or, you know, horizontal, and that could in itself become a limiting factor.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, they'll have to avoid those and, you know, stop on one side, start on the other typically.
You know, not only for the physical safety of the pilots in the helicopter, but I also think the induction, magnetism, voltage, electricity, you know, whatever that might interfere with their instrumentation.
Definitely.
Yeah, Walt, and they can't fly over urban areas either. They're not allowed to fly over urbanized areas. So you're right. High power lines are out, urbanized areas are out. So there are going to be some holes in this.
Okay, so maybe we could plan on having a discussion this coming Monday, and I'll add it to the agenda for the ad hoc meeting. And I don't know, Matt, I don't want to put you in a spot, but if there's the work that's being done in the Merced Subbasin, and Lacey, you're probably engaged with that as well, you know, it would be good to know. And then we also have Miguel, who's in the Modesto Subbasin, along with Walt, and Mike.
And Lacey.
So there's a variety of folks that kind of cross both basins. And so if we can kind of reach out to those folks and kind of know what's being talked about in the other subbasins, maybe we could provide a more unified approach that DWR might be more willing to consider, you know, for shifting flight lines, kind of on the approach that you were talking about, Mike. Yeah.
And Debbie.
Yes. Sorry, you're muted. Oh, go ahead.
I noticed, you know, Amanda was on the phone. I'm wondering if she has anything to add, or if she thinks we're on the right track in terms of what the conversations have been.
Hello, everyone. This is Amanda Price-Derby, DWR. I have definitely been listening to the conversation, and I haven't heard anything that isn't kind of in line with the department's expectations. And I think I've heard mostly kind of what we would want the agencies to provide, and the information, especially the conversation you guys just had about those those areas of interest. That's very important. And we will, like was discussed, we'll try to accommodate as best we can to meet the needs of the agencies. It is after all a product you will be using, you know, the agencies will be using. It's the department will also use, but mainly it's for your use.
So Amanda, is it better to try to find the flight lines that we would prefer, or is it better to try to just map those areas that were and describe the interest and then?
So the areas of interest, I think describing them would be very helpful. And then if you could put a flight line, like what you would, you know, your wish of what you would want or where that line would be so that you have it for the groundwater model in the future, you know, that is helpful. And as you guys understand, and we can only do so much, and we would try to accommodate that. And so but we still need to keep our grid and our grid spacing because that's part of what we've contracted to have done. So there is limitations, but I think we've done a lot, some accommodating for the Southern Valley on there to meet their requests. So I know we're willing to do it.
That's good to know. And Dominic, if there's information that Woodard and Curran has as they developed the model, that would be helpful as well.
Yep, we'll pull together what we can and share it with everyone.
Yeah, if you could kind of share that with us before Monday, if you have anything or any ideas, then at least we'll have an idea as we talk. Not to put you on the spot, I apologize.
Sounds good. Yeah, let me dive into what I think we can provide, and I'll reach out. That'd
be great. Thank you. Okay, so any other thoughts with respect to that? And is there anybody else that wants to be engaged with that process? Like I said, if there's, although I said if the communities might have more detailed e-logs or what have you, but if we're not able to fly over those, then I don't know if it's as helpful. Okay. Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you, Debbie. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. I thought I was having technical difficulties for a second. Okay, so that's closing up the meeting unless anybody has anything else that they wish to bring up.
This is Val, just real quick. I think most people know this, but DWR has posted some 4 approvals of new plans and 4 letters engaging in further consultation with the Merced and Eastern San Joaquin basins. So if you're interested in those basins, they're all posted on the Sigma portal, and we can look to see kind of where DWR is evaluating things. So
thank you, Valerie. Good information. Okay, so I feel like we're at the end of a marathon, and I'm waiting for that second win to get to completion here. And in order to do that, we have to have a few more meetings. So our next special meeting is going to be Thursday, December 9th. And then following that, our next regular meeting will be December 23rd, 2021. So the first meeting is the special meeting. We will not be having a meeting on Thursday, November 25th for Thanksgiving. And that leads us to our adjournment. Could I get a motion?
I'll move.
Okay, second. Anybody from the West want to leave the meeting today?
I will second.
Second, Karen.
Thank you. Everybody who agrees signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion carries and the meeting adjourns at 3:19 p.m. for the West Side. I'll hand it over to Lacey.
Great, thanks, Karen. For East Turlock Subbasin GSA, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move. This Dennis.
Motion from Dennis and a second.
Yeah.
Walt. Second.
Walt. Great. I'll do a quick roll call vote. Walt.
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Lacey votes yes. Motion approved. East Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC is adjourned.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.